David Ortiz, again, is the next person, just like his dad, to defend Fernando Tatis Jr. and take a bat to the league. Tatis tested positive for a banned anabolic steroid. Tatis said that it was only a topical spray because he had an infection from getting a haircut, and there was a ringworm in there, and he sprayed the spray on there and didn't realize it was a banned substance in there. Okay, believe it if you want to. I don't believe that. Either he is that flippant with steroid testing when I'm sure his agent, I'm sure team doctors, I'm sure there's a players union rep. I'm sure these guys get banged over the head all of the time with don't do this, don't do that. I find it very, very hard to believe that a guy who makes that much money would flippantly not care about potentially testing positive and just spray whatever he wants anywhere. But fine, maybe, which would suggest real immaturity. But that's neither here nor there. Because David Ortiz said, quote, MLB needs to have some regulations before they make public news like this with what happened to Tatis. I think they haven't handled the situation the right way. We can't kill our product. We're talking about an amazing player. Now, Ortiz told this to a reporter, Hector Gomez, and we have no other follow-up on this. So what does Ortiz mean? He either means this shouldn't be a positive test because it was just a topical spray, or don't announce it. If he's going to be suspended, don't announce it. Now, I don't know what the alternative here is. Fernando Tatis tests positive for a PED and the league is supposed to bury that? And there's going to be some nebulous reason why he's out until next year and into next year? That doesn't make any sense either. Like, this is not an alternative solution. If you're going to have suspensions for testing positive to PEDs, you're going to have to announce when guys are punished and suspended for PEDs. The NFL is remarkably healthy. The NFL couldn't stop making money. The NFL is the most powerful sports enterprise we have in North America. And the NFL, when you test positive for steroids or PEDs, they tell you. If you're going to get popped for a season because you dabbled in sports gambling, they tell you. If you got suspended for domestic violence or sexual assault like Deshaun Watson, or allegations of impropriety like Deshaun Watson, they tell you. So I don't see how it's killing baseball but not football to be open and honest about why guys are suspended. So Ortiz's rationale here, whatever it is, again, we don't have much context, it's just a quote tweeted out by Hector Gomez, is, I mean, the whole basis of it is stupid. So just Tatis quietly goes away until May of next year and nobody's supposed to ask why? Like, that's idiotic. But so, on a serious note, this is understandable from David Ortiz. Because this is exactly what happened to David Ortiz. In 2004, and I apologize if I'm digging up history that you already know, that this is like second grade math here, but in 2004, he tested positive for PEDs. And it was at a time where the names were not supposed to be made public. In 2003, there was already the outcry over steroids. The records had been shattered, but the romanticism was wiped away, and the innocence was gone, and baseball said, we've got to start testing, and the union said, we don't have a problem, nobody's taking steroids. And baseball said, we think you're wrong. Canseco has said it. Caminetti has said it. We think you're wrong. We think players are taking steroids. And the union said, no, they're not. And baseball said, okay, let's test everybody in the league, okay, or X number percentage of the league. And if a certain percentage comes back positive, then we know there's a problem and we have to institute testing. We think there's a problem bigger than you're admitting. And the union said if it's anonymous, fine. And the results will never be found out by the public. And that's what happened, except the New York Times got the name of David Ortiz as one of the positive tests. David Ortiz in 2004 would go on to become the hero of the 2004 Boston Red Sox, who broke the curse. He'd be a hero for the next 15 years in Boston, and he gets elected in the Hall of Fame this summer, inducted into the Hall of Fame, elected last winter. And I had tweeted, it's totally understandable David Ortiz would want Tatis's positive test covered up and forgotten. This is how Papi got into the Hall of Fame. And as you might imagine, there's all of those, just so cringe-inducing responses. You still got to hit a baseball. It has nothing to do with your clutch gene. He hit 688 in the World Series. What about Bonds? What about all these other guys did it? And I'm like, okay, again, I put myself in the crosshairs here because steroid talk on social media leads to stupidity. My point is literally this is how David Ortiz is in the Hall of Fame, because no other player in Cooperstown failed a steroid test. None. He's the only guy. Now, other guys have definitely taken steroids and are in the Hall of Fame. I think we know that voters have looked the other way on certain guys, and because there was no positive test, they said, fine, he's got to be in. Like Pudge Rodriguez, kind of everybody assumed that when he shriveled up into a backup singer on Menudo, looks like the guy's off the juice. Mike Piazza, guys assumed was on steroids for most of his career. Jeff Bagwell, people assumed he was on steroids most of his career. All of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. But there's a certain line that the voters say they won't cross, that if you tested positive, if you have been found guilty, like Alex Rodriguez, like Manny Ramirez, you'll never get in. David Ortiz is in. Why? Because I guess there's enough vagary around his positive test, and it was at a time before the punishments were installed, so he tested positive, but he wasn't suspended. And what helps out David Ortiz is he was a gregarious, charismatic, great guy that people loved. But the fact that he tested positive is an inarguable fact here. David Ortiz tested positive and is the only baseball player in Cooperstown that has a positive test. So, of course, David Ortiz thinks this. It worked for him. Test positive, shrouded in secrecy, tuck it away into a back corner, let people ask questions, and let the player just be like, I don't know what happened. And then let him ride his celebrity and success and popularity into the Hall of Fame one day. Now, I don't know if Tatis is going to go into the Hall of Fame, but what I'm saying is this was the David Ortiz game plan. He didn't know it in 2004, but he lived it. So for any nitwit, half-brain that is trying to tell me that, but David Ortiz did this, that, and the other thing, you got to be this, steroids didn't help you hit a home run. I mean, it's just like, shut up. I mean, just how locked into the same immediate reactionary response from 2005 is it? It's just, people just refuse to change on some things, and this is just one of those things, that reactionary, this is what I said 10 years ago, this is what I said 20 years ago, and this is always going to be my retort. Literally, David Ortiz has a positive test, shrouded it in secrecy and mystery, and was able to hide from it long enough to get into the Hall of Fame to where it's basically forgotten. And he's advising Tatis in baseball to do the same thing for a next young big superstar. And that's inarguable. If David Ortiz's positive test was more of the frontline talk topic that Rafael Palmeiro's is, right? That Rafi went to Congress and wagged his finger and then tested positive, Rafi's never getting in because of the positive test. That's it. That's the reason. Alex Rodriguez ain't getting in because of a positive test and a suspension. Manny Ramirez ain't ever getting in because of multiple positive tests. David Ortiz is in despite one. Why do you think he wants this test shoved into a dark corner so that nobody talks about it and forgets about it? I mean, duh. But again, I did this to myself. And what do you expect, DA, when you tweet about PEDs and then, you ask people to interpret what the line is supposed to be about? I mean, come on. I'm the idiot.